Well, with 19 years spanning 2 decades and 12 movies,
and millions of dollars in box office success, and zero continuity in storytelling,
we give you our review of X-Men, the last movie.
we just saw the last film in the X-Men series.
Yeah, the final movie.
And this movie is getting trashed by the critics.
Yeah.
I have to disagree with most critics out there. I found this movie to be enjoyable. It's not the best X-Men movie, but I still found it to be a pleasing entry in the X-Men series.
I'm 100% with you. I have a lot of X-Men bias. I love X-Men. I love the comics. I love X-Men movies. I always, whether it is I'm talking myself into it or not, I just enjoy X-Men movies. So I thought this movie was kind of a blast, and I remember saying to you at one point during the movie, because we were in an empty theater, which is really unfortunate for this movie, but I remember saying to you in the middle of it, and one of the most, the climactic, exciting ending of this movie, that people would be clapping and cheering the way they did in Avengers Endgame if there was just people in the goddamn movie theater. There was no one in there. There was like 4 other dudes in there aside from us, and it was in one of the big, beautiful theaters. I don't get it because I thought it was good. I thought it was a good, fun X-Men movie. It had X-Men fights. It had X-Men fighting other X-Men. It had X-Men using their powers together in some really cool, standout, exciting moments and character moments. It gave us a Cyclops we've never ever gotten in the movies, which is Cyclops, whether in the acting and the character and the presence he has in the movie, which is a lot of it, as one of the top 2-3 people leads, and his powers, constantly using them and seeing how cool his powers actually are. Same with Nightcrawler. He gets so much more Nightcrawler-y cool things to do.
Yeah, we definitely get to see a lot of really cool moments with Nightcrawler in this movie that we haven't seen in previous ones, other than in X2. You kind of get a callback to how great he is in that film.
You do, but you get so much more of them in this one.
I also thought it was great to see Beast go full Beast mode.
Yeah, he went Beast mode.
Wake your ass up because it's time to go Beast mode.
I enjoyed seeing some of those characters that haven't really been able to shine in the Vonverse, if that's what we're calling these last 4 X-Men films.
Yeah, I guess
that
so.
Tried to kind of reboot the series to some degree.
Yeah.
And they've done that with varying degrees of success. I still think that Bryan Singer has directed the 4 best X-Men movies, if you're not talking about Logan, which is a great film as well. What's the director's name? Simon Kinberg, who was originally a producer on this series.
He's written most of the movies.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think it was a complete failure on his part as a director. Like, I was not watching the movie thinking, oh, this is poorly directed. Yeah, a couple moments that had me groan here and there, but it was not as bad as, in my opinion, what Matthew Vaughn did with X-Men First Class, or obviously whoever fucking directed X3, some pedophile Me Too fucking convict on that movie.
Yeah, I felt this to be a more enjoyable, fun, action-packed ride with better effects, not as shaky and as dodgy as something like First Class, which is laughable in certain moments. But I'm not here to really compare it to the other ones because I have loved this franchise. Like, I know it's had issues. We've been talking about how do you even put these movies together? We just tried to figure it out, and it's literally like a fucking Rubik's Cube trying to figure out how do you put these movies in any kind of order, because every time you think you get it, you're stopped at a brick wall. Where do Deadpool movies go? Deadpool movies go at the very end.
Deadpool should go to the end, maybe the X-Men.
But if you take X-Men Origins Wolverine,
all 3 of these down here.
See, X-Men Origins Wolverine starts in the Civil War, so it's got to be first.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, you're kind of right about that. So that needs to move down.
But see, but then if you put Days of Future Past last because it fills up everything, then where does Logan go? Because Logan is an alternate future, whereas Days of Future Past.
But then you've got the time travel, and the time travel needs to be towards the end.
But see, this one's called The Last Stand. So was it The Last Stand?
This is in the 60s, so this needs to move down here.
If it's The Last Stand, it has to be the final bow, right?
You would think.
But see, then you have X-Men 1 and X-Men 2 that clearly take place before and after Days of Future Past, right? So maybe you could sandwich them in somewhere in the middle.
I don't know what you're saying anymore.
Deadpool is a prequel to X-Men First Class. Based on nothing. See, this one's actually just called X-Men, so this one with Deadpool.
No, we've determined that's first. You're wrong.
How about you take the first of every one of the iterations? So you take X-Men, you take Deadpool, you take X-Men Origins Wolverine. Okay, so X-Men Origins Wolverine is intended for you to only watch the first third. before moving on to X-Men
That's
1.
true. That's like the Civil War. It needs to go all the way at the beginning.
Yeah, so if you're going to do a movie marathon, you watch the first 45 minutes X-Men Origins Wolverine, then you put on First Class because he shows up in First Class around the same time as that.
That's
then
true.
you take X-Men 1 and you watch the entire movie, then the first 20 minutes of X2, and then you have to put in X-Men Days of Future Past.
Oh, well,
then you have to put
that.
X-Men 2 back in.
There's a scene from like the 80s in the beginning of X-Men 3, so that's got to be before Wolverine.
Well, actually, Jean Grey is the same age in this one as that she is in Apocalypse. So you actually watch the first third of The Last Stand, and then you have to put Apocalypse on the entire movie and then go back to X-Men. But it goes to show you how little I care about that because I enjoy the characters. I've always enjoyed the spectacle of the X-Men, the action stuff. I mean, even in the first one, which is so small, if you go all the way back to Bryan Singer's 2000, it's very small. There's very little action. It's not, if you go back, it's not very exciting. That movie was so wrapped up in awesome characters and treating them with respect and making it making its successes from characters and from how they're written and how they interact with each other.
I think that's why I still think that's my favorite of the X-Men series, is because it introduced us to, in my opinion, the first superhero. Okay, maybe I'm wrong with it. Superman did a great job, but this is the first superhero movie that took superheroes seriously and treated them like real characters, not comic book characters, and tried to put them into the world we know and not a comic book universe.
Yeah.
And they did a great job with continuity of that for a couple movies, and then they lost it. But,
and these have not been perfect. These movies have pissed off a lot of people for different reasons. Jubilee fans hate these movies. Rogue fans hate these movies, and I get all that, but it goes to show just the success of these to me is just like how I can see all that stuff and I understand all that stuff. I love Gambit. He's never really been done. I don't even really count that one they put in there. But it doesn't matter. They all have entertainment value. They're all, I mean, even The Last Stand has a lot of entertaining scenes in it. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, there's just, and this new one, which is the one we're here to review, like Dark Phoenix, I don't know, man. I liked it. I really liked Hans Zimmer's score. I didn't think I was going to because I hated it that they abandoned John Ottman's kind of theme that Singer has always brought.
Yeah.
But I really got into it, and it does what Zimmer does. It gets you like pounding with anxiety at certain moments, and it gets that intensity revved up.
Yeah.
This one had a lot of dark intensity.
Yeah, the whole movie, I think, had a lot of dark intensity.
Yeah.
I think this movie actually is one of the most character-driven of all the X-Men movies. I don't know what the critics were thinking when they talk about this movie, but I think this was actually like very dramatic, very emotional. There's some great performances in this movie. Even Jennifer Lawrence, who I hate in this series, has a couple moments in this one that worked for me. But yeah, I was surprised at how emotional this film was and how it resonated as a almost a drama at times.
Yeah.
It slows down, but I didn't feel like from a pacing issue that I was bored with the film in some of its slower moments. I was still right there with these characters.
Me too.
The younger cast, the Ty Sheridans and the new Storm and stuff, like they didn't do enough.
Good.
They didn't do enough with them in the film they were introduced. This film finally allowed them to grow a little bit as characters,
especially
and make
Cyclops.
me interested in them.
It does have an element of like feeling rushed towards the beginning. I do really like the beginning. I think it's fun, but with all Hans Zimmer stuff, you'd almost think that this was directed by Christopher Nolan for a few minutes when they're up in space, because the music is so much louder than everything else going on. And I remember that being in Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar. There's points where you can't hear the dialogue.
Yeah, exactly. But it certainly added to the intensity,
it did.
especially in that scene.
And the music
alone.
grew on me, and I really started to love the soundtrack, the score. As at first I was scratching my head because I was totally like, no, I'm pissed off. I want my John Ottman fucking theme song. We knew that wasn't the kind of movie we were getting the second this movie started, though.
Yeah, well, it fit with, this movie has some elements that are cosmic and space-oriented, and
finally,
I think there was elements of the score that kind of worked with that spacey side of the galactic side of this story.
And that's another thing, like another thing I was really surprised at. I thought that this one, and I don't know if this was Kinberg or like some producer or a second unit person or the effects team, but it had some scenes that felt like comic book jumping off of the fucking pages. And the cosmic stuff was a great example of that. I was so happy because X-Men spend half their fucking comic runs in space. Okay. And they've never left Earth in any of these movies. Granted, they only do for a short amount. It was cool to see that. And I know this bothered you a lot. Where was Quicksilver in this movie?
He's the character who certainly was sidelined the most, this time to allow others to shine, apparently, to allow others to use their powers when needed, because I feel like maybe he's written out of the film a bit because he's so powerful in those moments where he can do so much in such a short time, obviously. And so maybe they wanted to let other people shine and knew that he could kind of overpower certain situations, and so they needed to write him out. But that maybe was one element of the screenplay that I thought was poorly handled.
Putting closure to all this stuff, James McAvoy, he's always been given, with the exception of Days of Future Past, which was a really tight, good, polished screenplay, he's always been given fairly awful dialogue as Professor X, I think. It's been so much more hammy than Patrick Stewart's. Even though Patrick Stewart's was very one note, he didn't go through lots of emotions.
No.
He was just like, he was the cartoon from the 90s version of Professor X. And
which is what we wanted to see.
yeah,
Like, he embodied it very well.
And McAvoy's given a lot more like room to like have this character where he can make wrong decisions, not own up to them, be good guy, bad guy, but he gets a lot of cringe-worthy like especially in First Class, like groovy.
Groovy, baby.
Fucking Fassbender could just sit there and read the phone book. He's so good, man.
Yeah.
When you're a good actor, the camera doesn't mind like every shot of you just as a fucking extreme close-up because you're not gonna ruin it. And he's just extreme close-ups so much in this movie because he's so strong.
Well, yeah, and he's got some awesome rage face in this movie.
Yeah, dude,
like,
and
some moments. Everybody really does. Like I said, this is a very emotional movie, and there are a lot of moments for a number of characters where they have to get angry and rage and freak out, and I think they all do a great job.
Me too.
Sophie Turner, right? Is that her name?
So much better in this movie than she was in the last one.
Yes, I was not feeling her in the role in the last one.
No, she was great.
She did kind of embody that dark intensity that I guess you're supposed to get from the Dark Phoenix.
Yeah.
Her face really sold some of those moments of anger and intensity.
She did, man. I was worried about that too because I wasn't sure if she was going to be able to carry it, and the way they put her into that situation so quickly, you get like one nice little love interaction with Scott, which I thought was great because you needed to establish that. That wasn't even really a thing yet by the end of the last one. So you needed to have that connection put in there, and it was done just enough for me to care. And that was my problem going into this movie. I didn't think I was going to care because I didn't think that this new cast earned the right to do Dark Phoenix.
I agree.
And where I still don't think they did, it could have been something that was present through all of these movies and then came out later. I still think they handled it well, and I think Sophie Turner handled it really well, with the exception of maybe saying, I don't know what's happening to me one too many times.
Something's happening to me.
Nicholas Holt's always been a good beast, even though for some reason I feel like he just hates the makeup because he's hardly ever in it. But
I mean, the amount of makeup these people have to wear to be their blue characters, I get it. I'd be like, can we just write a couple more scenes where I'm not blue?
I don't know, man. You just keep giving me the money. You could fucking make me a giant piece of walking turd if you want.
His makeup has improved over the
Oh,
films.
dude,
I think he might
he looked
the
like
best
a
in this film
a
as
giant
he's-
blue cat in First
Yeah,
Class.
it's terrible in First
No, he
Class.
looks great in this one. It's kind of like they're almost slowly morphing him into the Kelsey Grammer look because he's more shaggy.
Yeah.
But I've always thought he's been a great Hank McCoy. One thing I'll say about this movie is it's really violent. There's a lot of deaths in it.
Magneto goes crazy at the end of the movie, just slicing people. I mean, he's got some crazy ass metal shards just flying in every direction, going right through some characters.
They used him so appropriately in this movie. He shows up somewhere in the middle and just does, like you said, his rage face. Gets the helmet going, leads a couple of people. That's what he does. Like, dude, Fassbender just perfect amount of peppering.
It doesn't have a standout scene that we've had from a couple others where it deals with his past or his internal struggle with his family.
We all know
we've
all
moved
that
on
now,
from
man.
that.
Yeah.
But those have really stood out as some of my favorite scenes in some of the other films. So we don't necessarily get that, but he still gave a great performance. He still brings the intensity that the character needs.
For all the shit this movie is getting and how I think it's going to be a Titanic failure, even though Titanic's one of the most successful movies ever made. I don't know. One of our very first reviews over 3 years ago was for Apocalypse, and I know people didn't like that one, but it didn't get the hate this one is getting. God, I almost say I maybe like this one better than that one. Just maybe because Apocalypse himself didn't quite come off as well as I wanted to, and after rewatch, it's a little bit hokier, but I still...
It is.
It has a better director, so it feels more like a movie. But
did Jessica Chastain do a better job as the villain in this film?
Yeah, but that's luckily... No, Jessica Chastain is misplaced in this movie. You almost don't even need that character. Jennifer Lawrence, I think they offered her... I think her deal for this movie was kind of similar to Harrison Ford for the Force Awakens. I'll do it, but make sure I ain't never gonna be in one of these again.
Never coming back. With time travel, everything's possible.
And because of that deal, she did a little bit better in this one than she did in, say, the last one.
And even wore the blue makeup most of her time.
But you notice, the patterns change in every movie, though?
Yeah.
Like, in the second one where she was most committed, her Future Past, where she was most committed to the role, I think, they made her look more like the Rebecca Romijn one, where she's got the short hair and the things are everywhere, the scales are everywhere. In this one, she basically is just putting on blue makeup, but there's a couple of star-looking things on her forehead.
Yeah, it looks more like they drew them on instead of actually applying physical pieces.
Yeah, or maybe they CGI'd it on.
I enjoyed this movie. It didn't blow me away, obviously. It was in the middle of the road for X-Men quality, but it doesn't dip to the lowest levels of the X-Men films, that's for sure. I would certainly add this to my collection of films. So it was entertaining enough. It looked good. It had some good performances. I thought the screenplay was all right. I was expecting a lot worse. So maybe on a repeat viewing of this film, the enjoyment level will dip a bit. But it was entertaining enough for a Saturday morning, and I wouldn't say it was a great conclusion to the X-Men series. Like, it's not a very big film to go out on. It's kind of like the first film where everything is kept on a small scale. So I'm gonna go with a 5 for this movie.
I was just surprised because I thought this was gonna be bad. I always want an X-Men movie to be good because I love this franchise. So I was pleasantly surprised. I wasn't blown away by the majority of the movie, but I gotta say, the same way a lot of people do with, Avengers, Infinity War, and Endgame and all that stuff, the ending of this movie, though much smaller in scale, the way it used the X-Men characters, the way they combated their enemies, the way the Hans Zimmer score pumped through that train, and some just really awesome standout moments of characters' powers, every one of them. So that's really all I ever want out of X-Men movies. Even the ones that aren't great, the reason I like them is because they do that thing to me, because as a kid, I'm like, oh my God, look at these characters, they're doing their thing. So I'm gonna go 7.25 for me, and I can't believe it. I know we are in the minority for liking the movie, but I don't give a crap. All these movies, even the bad ones, still have moments in them that I enjoy. Even things like X-Men Origins Wolverine. I mean, there's funny moments in that movie because Hugh Jackman's awesome as Wolverine. First Class, though not one of my favorites, I know we're in the minority on that one too, has beautiful moments. It brings out Magneto and Professor X like you never saw before. There's not gonna be any, this is a wrap for these movies, and I agree with John that I don't like the final shots. There is a little bit of finality to this movie, but I don't know if they really knew it was the last movie quite as much as they do now.
Yeah.
that it's over. So there's a tiny bit of like, hey, this is probably the last one, but had they known for sure, there would have been a lot more expanded on to like close every character and stuff.
I think so.
But so it's been a long, almost 2 full decades long road for X-Men movies, and whatever iteration we get of them moving forward, it'll never be the same as these. But hopefully they'll learn from some mistakes, which was continuity problems, and that's pretty much it, the continuity problems. And don't hire Brett Ratner.
Excited to see where this series is, not this series, but where the X-Men series will go. I guess being introduced into the MCU, there's all these wonderful characters to add to the MCU. I kind of feel like the MCU personally should start cutting a bit more of the fat. Yes, they just had a film that cut some fat in terms of characters. But if they get rid of a few of their current characters to introduce a few of these, I would be happy with that. I want to see a new Wolverine. I want to see a new Magneto. Sorry to see this series go as inconsistent as it was. I'm right there with you that there's enjoyment in every single one of these films. Very few of them are perfect to any degree, but I own every single one of these movies and wouldn't mind popping any one of them in just for a couple hours of enjoyment anytime.
See, that's the best way to sum it up. I can remember where I was for every one of these movies that I saw in the theater, and I've seen them all in the theater except X-Men Origins Wolverine, because I was one of those people that watched the bootleg copy when it came out. But I've seen every one of them in the theater, and I remember exactly where I was and what year it was. I mean, they go so far back. I was still in the fucking military when they were releasing these things in theater. So that's a wrap for the X-Men franchise, and that's also a wrap for Cinema Gulp's review of Dark Phoenix. Make sure you hit subscribe and notification bell. Leave some comments below. John, where can they find us?
Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Look for us under Cinema Gulp.
Until next time, this is Ben.
This is John. We drink your cinema.
I drink it up!